I want you to think of the difference between two types of teacher. One has a good understanding of the curriculum, who knows the content, and they've also broken it down into bite-sized lessons that they turn up organised on time for, with a clear picture of what they want the student to go away with having understood or achieved by the end of the lesson. They understand how this lesson will build on previous lessons and also how it's going to lead into the next series of lessons. What they're trying to do is well suited to the length of the lesson, and throughout the lesson, and particularly by the end of the lesson, they're paying attention as to whether the students seem to have achieved what their aim, what their purpose will be. And if need be, they're already starting to modify what they might do in the next lesson, whether it's slowing down the pace or picking up the pace or repeating some of the content of that lesson again in order to make sure that the learning aims are actually being achieved by the students, that they're not just sitting there through the lesson, but they are progressing in their own understanding. The other teacher turns up when they feel like it, never quite sure whether the lesson's going to happen or not. When they do turn up, they're not organised, they're not prepared, they've just grabbed something that will use the time. They pay little attention to, is this actually achieving the purpose or not, because, well, there really is no clear purpose. And once the lesson is over, they're not tying this into subsequent lessons, they're not worrying about what they're going to have to do even in the next lesson, quite possibly until they're actually walking to the next lesson. They really have no idea whether the student is progressing or not. The question is, which teacher am I going to learn more from? Now, one of these teachers may be easier, may even have more fun lessons. And if my purpose is to have fun lessons, but if my aim is get to a certain place in the curriculum, if you like, if my aim is to have achieved a certain amount of knowledge, of understanding, of proficiency in something, then which of these two teachers is going to equip me better as the student? This is such an important issue to think about if I'm on a self-taught learning to draw journey, because not only am I the student, not only am I learning to draw, but I actually have to be my own teacher. I have to fulfill the function, I have to do the tasks that a teacher would do, as well as all the tasks that a student would do. If I do a course, if I pay for a course, then that's part of what I'm paying someone else to do. But if I'm navigating this journey myself, I need to be not just a good student, but I need to be a good teacher. Let me outline here some of the responsibilities of a teacher, because it may well be that the fastest and most efficient way for you to improve your drawing is to actually improve in your role as your drawing teacher, rather than to work harder at the student side of things. Firstly, the teacher has a strong sense of the why of the curriculum, of where we want to end up. Why are we learning this? Why are we teaching this content? It's because at the end, we want to be in this place somehow. Now, whether that's a place of understanding, whether that's a place of being able to do something, whether that's a place of certain skill development, depends on what we're actually learning. But the teacher, right from the start, has a very clear picture of the end place in fairly detailed terms. And that's the place, whatever else they do, is angled around getting to. So with drawing, at the end of this curriculum, whether it's a year, whether it's a 5-year course, whether it's a lesson, whether it's a single session, what are we wanting to have achieved? Where do we want to be with our drawing, with our learning, with our drawing experience? What are we wanting to see on the paper? And how different is it from what we were seeing on the paper last lesson, or 6 months ago, or a year ago? And what are we hoping to see on the paper in a month, in 6 months, in 12 months? Because knowing where I want to end up, knowing the reason why I'm doing all that I'm doing, is so important for doing the right things, for making the right choices. If I don't have some sort of understanding of where I want to end up, well, I may end up anywhere at all or nowhere at all. There are so many different ways to draw. There are so many different things to draw. There are so many different drawing media to use. It's very easy just to wander around doing a little bit here, a little bit there, and not really getting anywhere in particular with our drawing improvement. But a good teacher always have a sense of why we are doing these lessons, of the end goal that we're wanting to achieve, and therefore can make sure that the lesson content, that the curriculum is always relevant to achieving the why, to get into that place that's important or desirable for some reason. The second thing a good teacher does, they work out the what that will get us to the why, works out the content that's needed to achieve the end goals. Not just the overall content, but the broken down for each learning session or lesson content. And if we're learning to draw, then our lesson times are going to be quite clearly the times we draw, whether we're drawing on location or from a photo in a studio or a bedroom, but also books on drawing we might read, visits to galleries we might take, and videos on how to draw we might watch. All of these are potential drawing lesson times for us. And to know where to start, how to plan, we've got to have a sense of not just what we're trying to achieve, but how much time we have to achieve it in, how intense those lessons, those classes are going to be, and also the ability of the students, how fast we can take them in a certain amount of time in a way that will give them every chance of doing well. A good teacher will have specific goals for each lesson, not just to learn something, but actually certain skills that are the focus, that will give a target and aim for what the teacher says, the way they say it, and the things that are required of the student. Whatever lesson input there is, there will be some sort of practical requirement of the student that will put into practice what they've just heard, that will give them a chance not just to show that they've heard it and understood it, but to integrate it into what they already know. And of course, these specific goals that the teacher has in mind are not just for the end of that lesson, but they're going to be for maybe the end of that week, the end of that unit, the end of that term, the end of that year, the end of that course, whatever we're looking at, whatever time frame we're looking at. And the way it usually works is the more specific the goals are, the easier it becomes to achieve them, because the teacher gets to focus systematically on a very wide range of skills and of things to learn. And it's a way of making sure that they're all covered, that there aren't a lot of lessons where we just comfortably do the same things over and over again. But there's always some area fairly soon where we're pushing into a new direction and we're dragging everything we've already learned with us as we go and integrating it with these new things that we're just learning now. So we don't waste time looking at focusing on things that perhaps we already know and we don't need to spend more time with. Perhaps things that we're not ready to learn, so we're not going to be able to achieve very well, and we're possibly going to leave ourselves more confused rather than better off at the end of it. Or simply things that aren't relevant for the sort of drawing end goal we want to have. They don't take us to the why of why we're doing these lessons, why we're trying to learn this at all. They might be fun, they might be entertaining, but they're a distraction really from why I'm doing this in the first place. A good teacher will have some sense of this in every lesson. Now, if I'm an absolute beginner at drawing, my content is going to be fairly basic. It may be basic line work skills, line work confidence, how to hold a pen, how to move my arm, how to start observing for observation for drawing rather than for general life. It may be some focus on keeping proportions correct as I transfer from a reference to my drawing. If I'm a little further on in my drawing, it may be starting to look at drawing techniques such as hatching. It may be starting to understand some issues such as perspective. A little further on, when I have all of these things, at least to some degree, comfortably under my control, I can start to look at more sophisticated ways of thinking and of expressing myself in my drawings. I might start to consider edges more, avoiding straight lines, but starting to use marks that create the effect of edges. I might be looking at visual effects in general. I might be looking at how can I create the sense of distance that we see in life, that we don't always see in a photo perhaps as clearly, but which we can put back into our drawing. Starting to go beyond trying to make a copy of the drawing and actually to create something that builds on all the strengths of the drawing process rather than the photographic process. So a good teacher knows the what. They have a strong understanding of the content and how it can be broken down into more achievable, more understandable time sessions that the student can work through with some sense of progression from where they've been and where they're going to. This is a quick one. A good teacher organises the when. Will tell us how often our lessons are and when they're going to be and how long they will be. An organised system of learning needs some predictability as to when it's going to happen, because understanding when it's going to happen and how long the learning sessions are going to be, how frequently they're going to be, is important in organising the what, in organising the content, how much we're going to try and achieve in each lesson. Has a lot to do with the lesson length and the closeness of the lessons to each other. If I'm going to give myself a drawing lesson when I have the time, that's as good as saying, yeah, it's a nice thought, but I'm not really going to do it. We need to have set times where we have an expectation of doing a lesson, whether we feel like it or not. I didn't go to school when I felt like it. I went to school when it was time to go to school because, well, that's the best way to learn. From a learning point of view, frequent but shorter lessons are far more productive in learning than longer lessons, even the same time or longer, but much further apart. Even 15 or 30 minutes, 3 or 4 times a week, is going to be far better than a 3-hour session once a week, because we end up with more what I call learning cycles in that time. And look, there are times when life will crash in on what we've planned. There are times I didn't go to school because I was sick or something really important meant I couldn't be there. But when that happened, I knew there was work I had to catch up on that I'd missed. And even if I'm the only student in my class, I still understand if I miss a drawing session that I have something to catch up on if I want to keep the same time track for my learning experience. Obviously, I have some flexibility, but in the end, understanding that I've missed a session keeps me realistic about what I need to be doing in my future sessions. But if I didn't have a time planned to draw for a learning session, then I won't appreciate that I've missed it and that I have something that I should work at catching up. This next one's also very quick, but a teacher usually takes responsibility for the where of our lessons. I need to have a place where I have the lessons. I went to school, I went to a physical building when I was a kid to learn. And when I was sitting in those classrooms, I knew that what I was doing was learning whatever that subject was. It's very helpful if we're self-taught on our drawing journey that we find ourselves locations we use consistently, particularly for our drawing session times, because that keeps all the circumstances, things like the temperature, the lighting, the seat, the table level, consistent, and that's helpful. But also psychologically, it helps my mind prepare for the fact that I'm about to start drawing, I am drawing, and this helps me clear my mind, helps me keep things out that aren't part of that learning to draw, actual drawing process experience. Well, the sun's come out, but there's another very important thing that a teacher does to mark our work. It's to give a grade or a mark, but it's also to give comments. It's also to let us know what was strong, what was weak, what was out and out wrong about the work we done. It was a way of the teacher seeing whether we were ready to move on, or whether we needed to stay in that place for longer, or possibly even whether we needed to go back to an earlier level of work in order to build a more solid foundation for where we were going to move on to. So as a self-taught artist, I need to mark my own work. I need to look at it and assess it. Perhaps critique it is a more helpful word to use. I need to look at it and say, well, has this achieved what I thought it was going to achieve? Does it look the way I thought it was going to look as far as I had actual intention with this drawing, it can be very helpful to show someone else and to ask them, how does this look to you? I'm not after compliments, I'm after direction. Is there anything that doesn't quite look right to you? What looks stronger? What looks weaker? A friend who will take this seriously and actually speak honestly to us is going to be a very valuable friend indeed. But we need to learn to do it ourselves first, because we have a stronger idea, a more directed idea of where we were trying to go with it. And in as much as I can see that my drawing hasn't got there, I have focus for the next one. Or it may be that in a modest way, I have achieved something. Now it's a focus for my next drawing to choose a drawing that will push me further in this hatching or this perspective or this drawing of capturing the effect of architectural detail, of distance in the landscape, whatever it is that I thought, gee, that came together and worked quite well in this drawing. Now I know that's an opportunity for me to go further in this area by deliberately choosing my next lesson to give me that practice to push me further. If you look at my playlist of tips for the self-taught artist, I do have videos on how we can critique our own work, what things we can look for, and how we might know whether we've achieved them or not. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. While a good teacher can be a tremendous benefit in our drawing journey, if we're having to work our own way navigating this path with a little thought and planning, we can go a lot further, a lot faster, a lot more effectively with a little bit of thinking about what it means to be a good teacher and how I can be a good teacher to myself. It's not the voice in the video that's the teacher. That voice is a resource that, as the teacher, I've chosen to show the student and to use for the curriculum that I'm presenting. I've got videos on how to choose the best drawing videos for me or for you if you're interested in that. But look, in the end, whatever sort of drawing journey that you're on and however it's being directed and wherever you're at in it, make sure you have fun. Fun as the teacher and fun as the student. I'll see you next time. Bye.